It begins in silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy kind. The kind that feels like a thick fog inside your chest. The kind that makes everything taste like nothing. You wake up, but you don't rise. You function, but you don't feel. You laugh, but nothing echoes back. Something is missing. Not outside, but inside. And you don't know what it is. Only that it's dragging you downward. This is the descent. And no one tells you it's coming. There's no announcement. No clear sign. Just the slow unraveling of the world you built around you. The identity, the habits, the illusions. They don't break. They fade. Until all that's left is you and the silence. Across cultures, across time, this descent has been told in myth. Orpheus enters the underworld to retrieve love. Dante walks through 9 circles of sin to find grace. Christ descends. Before resurrection, shamans undergo ego death before returning with vision. Every great transformation begins not with light, but with loss. Every path to truth begins in hell. But this hell isn't fire, it's shame, it's grief. It's the sound of everything you avoided asking to be heard. Carl Jung called it the night sea journey. Joseph Campbell called it the belly of the whale. Dante called it inferno. But all of them meant this: you cannot find yourself until you're willing to face what you've buried. Hell is not a punishment. It's not karma. It's not divine revenge. It's the place where your old self goes to die, so your real self can begin to breathe. But we fear it. We numb ourselves. We keep scrolling, keep working, keep pretending, because if we slow down, even for a moment, we feel it rising. The thing we locked in the basement, the emotion we weren't allowed to feel, the version of us that was never safe enough to be seen. That's what hell holds, not demons, but truth. So what if your breakdown wasn't a malfunction, but an invitation? What if the darkness you're avoiding is the only place you'll ever meet the part of you that's real? This video is not about salvation. It's not about healing. It's not even about hope. Not yet. It's about the path that no one wants to walk, but that every honest soul eventually must. The descent into yourself. Everyone wants transformation, but no one wants descent. We want the light without entering the dark, the healing without the hurting, the wisdom without the wound. But here's the truth. You cannot become whole until you've faced what's broken. You cannot rise until you've descended. The path to self-knowledge, the real kind, is not found in affirmations, not in productivity hacks, not even in therapy that avoids the core wound. It's found in the place you swore you'd never return to, that memory, that voice, that thing you buried under 1,000 distractions. Hell is not some external place. It's the space inside, you where your pain waits to be seen, and you can live your whole life avoiding it. Many do. They keep it tidy. They build routines around it. They call it high functioning. They call it success. But something always feels off. Shaky. Empty because part of them is missing, and that missing part, it's down there. In the descent they never took. Every myth, every great story of becoming begins with this step. Not forward, not upward, downward, into grief, into shadow, into the unknown. It's why shamans undergo ego death. Why monks enter silence. Why heroes leave the village. It's not self-improvement. It's self-confrontation. Because real self-knowledge doesn't feel like clarity at first. It feels like chaos. You stop knowing who you are, what you want, what to trust. You question everything. You feel raw, exposed, ungrounded. That's not regression. That's the moment the false self starts to break. And what breaks is what no longer belongs. So no, this isn't a feel-good journey. This isn't a step-by-step roadmap. It's not curated or branded. It's dark. It's uncomfortable. And it's absolutely necessary. Because unless you pass through your own hell, you'll never trust the version of you that rises on the other side. So where did this idea come from? Why has every spiritual tradition and philosophical system pointed toward descent as the first step toward becoming whole? Let's go back to Plato, to Dante, to Jung. Every culture has its version of hell, and it's rarely just about punishment, it's about truth, revelation, the parts of ourselves we've exiled, brought into the light by walking into the dark. Because the descent has always been more than symbolic. It's the soul's rite of passage. Plato's cave. The pain of seeing Plato described it like this: we are born in a cave, chained, facing shadows, thinking the illusions we see on the wall are real. Then one day, we see the fire. We realize the shadows were lies, and when we leave the cave, the light hurts. It blinds us. Truth doesn't feel like enlightenment at first. It feels like disorientation. This, Plato says, is the first step of wisdom. Realizing that everything you believed was real might not be. That's the descent, the shattering of illusion. Dante's Inferno, the descent as a map. Dante didn't just describe hell, he mapped it. 9 circles, each deeper than the last, each one representing a psychological state, not just sin but misalignment, lust, gluttony, greed, the craving for what numbs, wrath, heresy, the war with truth, fraud, betrayal, the collapse of trust in the self. Hell wasn't just a place. It was a mirror, each soul trapped, not by fire, but by the refusal to change. But Dante doesn't stay in hell. He walks through it. He learns from it. And only then does he reach Paradiso, not by bypassing suffering, but by integrating it. Carl Jung. The shadow and individuation. Jung went deeper. He didn't place hell in the afterlife. He placed it inside you. He called it the shadow, the parts of yourself you repress, deny, and disown. Anger, jealousy, grief, desire, weakness. We lock these away to be good, to be accepted, to belong. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It waits until it leaks out, in dreams, in projections, in sudden rage, in numbness that won't go away. The journey to self-knowledge, Jung said, begins when you enter the cave of your own psyche and say, "Show me what I couldn't face." The descent is not pathology, it's initiation. Nietzsche, eternal return and self-affirmation. Nietzsche didn't believe in hell as punishment, but he believed in suffering as necessity. He asked, if you had to live this life over and over again, every pain, every regret, every descent, would you say yes? To him, hell was not a place. Hell was refusing to own your life. To affirm your suffering is to become free. To integrate your pain is to become whole. He believed, he who has a why can bear almost any how, and that why, often found only after passing through your personal inferno. They all agree, whether it's Plato's illusion, Dante's architecture, Jung's shadow, or Nietzsche's radical affirmation, they all point to this. The only way to become who you are is to descend into who you've been afraid to face. These aren't just stories, they're instructions, not for perfection, but for integration. The descent is not a failure, it's the first honest step. So how do we see this descent in our own lives? Not in myth or theory, but in breakdowns, grief, trauma, rock bottom. What does it actually look like to walk through hell and return changed? You don't need to read Dante to know what hell feels like. You've already been there. Maybe not with flames and demons, but with silence, shame, the kind of pain that makes time distort, the kind that doesn't just hurt, it undoes you. Rock bottom, as descent ask. Anyone who's hit rock bottom. The job loss, the divorce, the diagnosis, the betrayal. The morning you woke up and realized you don't recognize yourself anymore. That moment isn't a glitch, it's an initiation. Not by choice, but by necessity. Because everything you built on denial, distraction, or disconnection is collapsing. And beneath the rubble, something waits to be born. The descent of grief, losing someone you love, is another kind of hell. Not because of the absence, but because of what the absence reveals. Who you were with them, who you no longer get to be, how fragile everything is. Grief strips you bare. It removes all the small talk. It demands silence, stillness, truth. It is descent. And if you let it, it teaches you more than any philosophy ever could. Trauma, as inner underworld trauma, isn't just about what happened. It's about what stayed trapped in your body, what froze, what splintered off. Healing isn't about getting over it. It's about descending into the parts of you that broke and bringing them home. That journey, it's messy, raw. It can feel like death, but it's not destruction. It's integration. The artist's descent. Some of the most profound art, music, poetry, novels, films, didn't come from joy. They came from descent, from people who were dragged into the underworld of their own psyche and returned with a gift. That gift? Vision, voice, language for what the rest of us couldn't say. Art is often the smoke that rises from someone else's fire. Modern descents, therapy, psychedelics, darkness retreats. Even today, people are rediscovering descent, therapy that goes beneath the mind to the body, psychedelic journeys that dissolve the ego, darkness retreats that strip away all distractions, somatic work that unearths rage, fear, sorrow. These aren't trends. They're modern underworlds, and those who enter honestly don't come back fixed. They come back whole. Warning, not all who descend. Return the same descent is powerful, but it's not safe. Some lose themselves there. Some run back to the surface too quickly. Some try to ascend without learning the lesson, because the descent doesn't just ask for your pain. It asks for your ego, your masks, your control. It asks you to surrender everything that isn't true. And that's terrifying, but also liberating. Every real transformation you've witnessed, from someone else or in yourself, likely began here, not with inspiration, but with collapse. So what actually happens inside the psyche during descent? Why does it feel like dying? And how do you know if you're evolving or unraveling? Let's look deeper into the mind itself. To descend into the self is to step into territory the mind has spent years avoiding, not because you're weak, but because you're wired to survive, not to understand. The brain's job is to protect you, to filter reality, to create a coherent story, but the descent, it tears that story apart. The collapse of the false self. Most of us don't realize we're wearing a mask until it cracks. You built it to be loved, to be accepted, to be safe. I'm fine. I'm strong. I'm successful. I'm in control. But when the descent begins, these identities fall away, not gently, violently. You forget who you are, what you value, what you believe. This is ego death, not metaphorically, psychologically. Dissolution versus integration. The mind doesn't like the unknown. It fights the descent with distraction, with intellectualization, with blame, with perfectionism, with collapse. But the truth is, descent isn't about solving, it's about feeling, facing, letting the psyche break open so that something deeper can emerge. This isn't a breakdown. It's a breakthrough in slow motion. Jungian shadow. Where Carl Jung believed the unconscious was full of gold. But first, you had to face the dragon. The shadow contains repressed anger, unacknowledged grief, unintegrated shame, forgotten creativity, secret desires, and the deeper you go, the more terrifying and liberating it becomes. Because what you thought was dark was often just unloved. To integrate the shadow is to return parts of yourself that were exiled, sometimes for decades. The inner war during descent, the psyche splits. The part of you that wants to transform and the part of you that wants to stay safe, they clash. In dreams and symptoms, in fear that feels irrational, in panic attacks, in numbness that won't lift. You're not going crazy. You're being reconstructed. Your nervous system is trying to unlearn decades of adaptation, and that's not weakness, it's evolution. Dissent as sacred death. The mind experiences dissent as death because something really is dying. The need to please, the lie of control, the obsession with being good, the story that you're unworthy, the belief that your pain was your fault, and what's being born? Something quieter, more whole, more rooted. But birth hurts. So does truth. So does meeting yourself without armor. Dissent is not a breakdown of the self. It's a meeting with the self, capital S, the one you forgot, the one that remembers. So, if dissent transforms the individual, what happens when a whole society avoids it? How is our cultural fear of the underworld shaping our media, politics, mental health, and collective consciousness? We don't just fear dissent individually, we fear it collectively, because dissent means slowing down, questioning, admitting something's not working. And modern society, it's built on the illusion that things are fine, as long as we stay busy. The cult of constantness scroll, post, react, repeat. We live in a world addicted to speed but terrified of silence, because silence is a mirror. And in silence, the shadows rise. We've engineered everything, from our devices to our schedules, to keep us away from the stillness where dissent begins. The numbing of the collective soul. We anesthetize ourselves with productivity, with perfectionism, with pharmaceuticals, with spirituality that bypasses pain, with consumerism dressed as identity, and beneath it all is a quiet scream, not from chaos, from avoidance. A world that refuses dissent becomes a world that forgets how to feel. Collective dissent. Events. Sometimes, dissent is no longer optional. The pandemic, global anxiety, climate collapse, mass burnout rising, suicide rates, generational disillusionment. These aren't glitches, they're cracks, openings, the beginning of a deeper conversation the culture doesn't know how to have. Who are we when the mask slips? Pop culture's dissent. Fetish. Even in media, dissent is everywhere, but still at a safe distance. Anti-heroes in prestige dramas, villains with tragic backstories, reality TV meltdowns packaged as entertainment, redemption arcs sold as plot twists. We consume dissent. But we rarely engage it, because engaging it would mean doing what no algorithm rewards: slowing down, breaking open, asking real questions. The rise of depth. Work, and yet, something is shifting. Shadow work is trending. Somatic therapy is exploding, psychedelic-assisted. Healing is being legalized. More people are seeking meaning over money. People are no longer content with surface healing. They want root-level transformation. They want dissent. They just don't know that's what it is. But even this movement risks becoming performance. Another lifestyle. Another product. True dissent isn't curated. It's chosen. It's messy, quiet, and profoundly real. We're living in a moment where the world itself may be descending. Systems are cracking. Identities are collapsing. Beliefs are breaking. And the only way forward might be downward, into the discomfort, into the unconscious, into what we haven't yet dared to feel, not collectively. So if dissent is sacred, individual, and collective, what happens when we say yes to it, instead of resisting? What does it mean to walk through hell and come back with truth? So here you are, not in a pit, not in a spiral, but at a threshold, because dissent isn't where you end. It's where you begin. Again, this time, without illusion. You've shed the skin that no longer fit. You've sat in the fire of your own becoming. You've faced what you thought would destroy you, and found something stronger underneath. Not prettier, not more polished, but real. And that's what the dissent was always about. Dante didn't stay in hell. Neither did Orpheus or Christ or the shamans, and neither will you. The purpose of dissent isn't to punish. It's to reveal. To reveal what's false, to reveal what's unlived. To reveal the soul beneath the roles, Carl Jung said. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The goal is not to be perfect, it's to be whole, and wholeness always includes the parts you tried to bury. So here's your real task. Don't rush the return, honor the descent. Listen to what it taught you, because if you climb out too fast, you'll miss the gold buried in the ashes. The clarity, the voice, the part of you that now knows how to sit with suffering and not flinch. This is self-knowledge, not found in books or mantras or success, found in the underworld of your own truth, where you met yourself in the dark and didn't run. So next time the world tells you to rise, ask yourself first, have I descended far enough to rise with truth? And if not, know this, hell isn't your enemy, it's your forge. And every time you choose to face it, you become a little less afraid of becoming fully, unapologetically, endlessly you.